time today on talent management. We're going to start on a macro level, and then we're going to drill down. So when we said that, it's important to understand the context of talent management. We recognize in all of our organizations, we have a corporate level strategy, a business level strategy, and functional level strategies. So the corporate level strategy, even though the name might imply big business, it isn't. It just means your overarching strategy, whether or not your organization is following a strategy of growth, retrenchment, or stability. Our HR strategy happens to be one of those functional level strategies. And within our HR strategy, we have a talent management strategy. Now, there have been numerous surveys that have been conducted with global CEOs. So we're not just talking about American businesses, we're talking about organizations the world over. When you ask these CEOs, well, what keeps you up at night? What do you suppose is one of the top challenges on their list across the world? Exactly, talent management. People. It's the people that make a difference, and the culture will indeed come into play. Now, we can actually talk about the hiring process in terms of hits and misses. We can look at our desirable decisions and our undesirable decisions. And of course, we know that the most critical decision that we make will ensure that we bring in, that is, we hire those individuals that end up being top performers. There are huge costs that are associated with bad hiring decisions. So this is where we're really trying to build that business case for why you should care. It's going to cost you money. And even more than the financial resources, I guarantee you it will disrupt your business. If we were going to invest in a sports team, would we feel comfortable investing our money in a team that had a great starting lineup and no one on the bench? We wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, would we? Wouldn't we feel more comfortable investing in a sports team that had a great starting lineup and then had a powerful bench? So if something happened to one of those starting members, there's someone we can draw from. We need to think of our talent and our organizations in exactly the same way. Who do we have on the bench? You don't want to wait until you have the opening and then you're scrambling around. And that's when you're likely to end up with a 5 weeks opening.
So there's 6 steps for effective interviews. The first thing we want to do is design the interview. This is all the specifics, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, the how. When we're designing the interview as well, we're making up and developing our interview questions ahead of time. We're figuring out the questions we're going to ask before anyone arrives. We're preparing. And after you've asked them the questions, you're into step 4. You're closing out the interview. And then the last step is 6, and that's after they've gone home. You're analyzing the information they provided in the interview. And with that, you should develop a rating scale. So for each question, maybe you're using a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the low end, 5 being the high end. And how did question 1, how did that applicant, how did their response fall into that rating scale? Were they on the low end, 1, 5? You know, where were they on that continuum? How well did they answer question 1? And you would do that for each of the questions. So there's a handout in your folder too. It's the blue one, Tips for Effective Interviews. This kind of provides a nice summary. And then we'll get Zach up here.
I'm going to kick off today with a case study, actually. The beauty of the case study is it can apply to anyone. I'm going to give a very specific example, but similar things happen across all industries, across all positions, and employees and walks of life, so it should be something that all of us can relate to. The story goes like this. A corporate office for a bank, a local bank around here, and they were looking for a receptionist to man their desk. They needed someone with multi-phone line system experience. It's a difficult job if you've never been a multi-phone line receptionist, so they had interviewed some folks from other banks. As you may or may not be aware, there's some very large banks in Delaware. Most of them don't use multi-phone line systems. It's more of a call center environment. They're taking calls one at a time. So they hired someone. We'll call her Jane, and Jane had worked at a local warehouse just around the corner. She had 10 years of experience. She had worked an 8-line multi-phone line system, which was more than what was used in the corporate office. They brought her in for an interview. They immediately felt comfortable that she was able to do the core requirements for the position that they needed. Fast forward 3 weeks. It's the end of the week, and the hiring manager's in a conundrum. Jane was late every day this week. Not epically, but she was late. She was late every day. One day she showed up in jeans and a t-shirt, and her hair wasn't done. And on Friday, one of the bank VPs called into the company, and there was an urgent issue. She wasn't really relevant, and Jane told her to calm down and I'll get back to you. And that really rubbed the Some iteration of this happens all the time across businesses. This is a classic example of something that happens when two organizations have very different corporate. But we will get to that because that's probably the most important part. I've said all this information and pointed out some information on culture, but what do you do with it and how do you think about it? And really what we're going to get to is having each of you in this room do a little bit of work on your culture and try to figure out how you would screen for cultural alignment during the interview process. Meat and potatoes, getting to your question, cultural assessments during the interview process. Really were 4 things that will help in my experience or ideas. Certainly it's not limited to this, there's many other ways, but I'm talking about observation, questions on culture, situational questions, and assessment testing. And I'll go over each of those in a little bit. Examples of, pretty frequently customers would call in and I'd tell them to calm down and I'd resolve the situation and I'd look into it and get back to them. Then somebody somewhere is going to say, and it's a talking point. It doesn't mean you don't hire Jane, it means you talk about it so that there isn't a miscommunication and you have 2 people on different sides of the spectrum when she starts, which was the reality that happened. But if everyone could just take a few minutes and work through, then we'll work through some examples and see how we could look for this in an interview process.